Welcome back, everyone, to our first guest speaker session of the conference. Once again, my name is Lise, and I am delighted to introduce you to our first speaker, Nick Peachey. Nick is a two-time, hi Nick. Nick is a two-time British Council Elton's Award winner for innovation in English language teaching. He's also the founder and director of pedagogy at Peachey Publications, a publishing company that designs digital learning materials for English language classrooms. This is Nick's second time presenting at ElliiCon. I don't know if some of you were here last year and got to see his presentation. It was fantastic. We were just talking about it backstage, and we know that this one's going to be just as awesome. So Nick, the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Just before I get started, I'll let you know that I will be sharing a link to the presentation. It has quite a few example prompts and things like that in it. So if you're worried about getting those, don't worry too much. I'll be sharing it later. If it's okay.
Great.
Okay. So hopefully now you can see it. Okay. Okay, so this session is on ChatGPT as a tool for flipped learning, and yeah, that's what it's on. I won't bother introducing myself too much. I've already had a great introduction. There's sort of examples of my two Innovations Awards wins. There's a picture of me when, before COVID, when the beard was much shorter, and a picture of a book that I've written on ChatGPT in the language classroom, which goes together with a course that I've written. Underneath here, you can pick these up later. There are links to my social media presence where I share various things related to educational technology, English language teaching, and increasingly sort of artificial intelligence. So if you do want to find out the kind of things that I follow for free, by what I share for free, by all means, check those out later. Okay, so let's get on with the section. I mean, the first thing is, before we go into sort of AI and what ChatGPT can do for flipped learning, let's have a quick look at what flipped learning is. And here's a very kind of traditional definition of flipped learning. This is from 2011, and it's interesting because I'm not sure how much of this is still true. I mean, there was this bit about there should be some element of student control over time, place, path, or pace. I'm not sure if that's still true of blended learning, whether it has to be that way, but generally it is. And this thing about bricks and mortar location, I think, is quite an interesting bit as well. And we'll look at that in a bit more detail. So this is probably the most traditional form of blended learning, and probably where most of us started when we first started using the internet as a supplement for our courses, our face-to-face courses. So traditionally, our core courses have been taught in the physical classroom, face-to-face. That's our core content. Lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4, lesson 5. And, maybe after the lesson, we gave students something to do for homework online. Maybe it was a worksheet to do, or an interactive quiz, or a video to watch. So core input in the classroom, going to supplementary revision work outside of the classroom. Of course, when the flipped model came along, it turned that upside down, and we moved towards actually teaching the core input went online. So students studied online first, and then they came into the classroom, to have the face-to-face part, and that's where they consolidated skills and activated their learning. So they had theoretical input. It might have been grammar video or a grammar presentation before the class, came into the class and actually used the grammar and actually used the activities, what they'd learned in the classroom for group or pair work activities. So that's kind of the basis of flipped learning. It took that blended learning model, turned it upside down, and it became flipped learning. So if we look at what's changed, actually quite a few things have changed. I mean, post COVID, those kind of distinctions between face to face and online became blurred. We still have our asynchronous face to face where students can go and do interactive activities online, but we also had the remote face to face where students were meeting in platforms like AirMeet or Zoom and with a teacher and having face-to-face classrooms. So that changed the nature of things a bit. We still had our physical presence where students would go and meet physically in the classroom and interact with each other. But sort of developments in mobile devices also meant that in the classroom they could also interact with the internet too. So face-to-face wasn't always just face-to-face in the classroom. It could have also be interacting with online materials, and just as it could be at home. We've now added a new possibility to that, and I think AI is an interesting addition to that mix because it allows the students to work with artificial intelligence as a partner. We can actually give students access to a theoretically, at least, intelligent program that they can work with in partnership with, and it can buddy up with them. And they can do this in the classroom, or they could do it at home in preparation for the classroom. And that's what I want to look at, some of those things that they can do with artificial intelligence to prepare them to go into the classroom so that when they work in the classroom, their performance is that much better. So why AI? Why can AI do this? And I think, you know, if I go back to my first encounter with artificial intelligence, it was actually about 20 years ago. Back in 2001, 2002, there was a very uh, popular science fiction film that was produced by Steven Spielberg called Artificial Intelligence. And it was a great film. It was about a young boy who was an android, but he wanted to be a real boy. It was actually based on the story of Pinocchio. And so he wanted to be a real boy. He looked like a real boy, but his mother and his parents always knew that he wasn't real. And this impacted on their perception of him. But he tried and tried to be like a real boy so that he could be loved. And at the time, there was a website that went with this film and it had a chatbot on it. So you could go onto the website and there was just a little sort of field where you could ask it questions and you could chat with it. And I thought this was a great opportunity for my students to actually practice their English. At the time, I was teaching in Morocco, and I had a group of teenage Moroccan students, a bit younger than teenage, about 11 or 12 years old. And I wanted them to practice their communicating in English to develop their fluency. And they were very reluctant to do it with each other. So I took them to the computer room, gave them the link to the chatbot, and they started discussing things with the chatbot. And what I found was that they were actually having some very good discussions that they were quite enjoying. In fact, they were having better discussions than some of the discussions that you could have in chat room with a real person, for reasons that I'll go into in a moment. So these students were kind of really enjoying interacting with this chatbot. It would answer any question they asked, and it had no self-consciousness. It wouldn't, if they asked it about love or faith or anything like that, it would answer them. The main problem with the chatbot at the time, though, was that it had kind of no backward memory of the previous part of the conversation. So if you referred back to something, it was totally lost and confused. And after a while, because of this, they started to lose interest. Um, that's something that's changed radically, particularly over the last year with the introduction of the newer models of ChatGPT. And chatbots now are very remarkable in that, for these very reasons, they can follow conversational threads. You can refer back to things that you've spoken about previously without having to sort of reconstruct what you're telling them. And they follow that conversation much as a person would. It's like they're remembering what you told them. It's also great. They're also great because they can instigate response. It doesn't have to be you putting in the question and then giving you the answer. They will ask you questions, which is, again, much more like a human interaction or a human conversation. As I said earlier, unlike most people, they will answer any question that you ask them, and they will answer it about anything. You can ask them about almost anything, and they will give you an answer. They might make up the answer, and it might not be factual or absolutely correct, but they'll give you an answer if you ask for something. Another nice thing about them is that they never get tired or bored or impatient, which is very nice because you can ask them the same questions over and over again. Unlike some teachers, they don't get bored or impatient, or some partners, they don't get bored or impatient with you. They have no self consciousness or ego, so you can ask them anything. And the last one, which I find really interesting, is that they can be programmed. So you can, using plain English or whatever language you speak, you can actually write a short list of instructions that programs them to fulfill a specific function. And I find that that's a very interesting aspect of ChatGPT and similar bots. Let's have a look at what that looks like. I'll just cough for a moment, have some water. One thing that I should also mention is that although mostly during this presentation, you'll see me interacting with ChatGPT by text. I have problems saying that sometimes, ChatGPT. I get the P and the T mixed up sometimes, I'm afraid. It's my dyslexia. Um, Although most of what you'll see is me interacting with ChatGPT by text, you can actually interact with it via voice. And I've put a link in here to a free app, a plugin that you can download for Chrome. And when you download that plugin, you'll see this little toolbar along the bottom. I hope you can see it. There's a yellow part and a blue part. And this is a toolbar that allows you to interact with ChatGPT by voice. You can actually choose the language, and you can even choose the voice, whether you want a male voice or a female voice. You can decide. And once you activate this, you can speak to ChatGPT and you can hear what ChatGPT says as well as seeing the text. What you're seeing here is an example of a little conversation I had using voice, and I asked it to give me feedback on my pronunciation. That's my prompt at the top. And it replied that it would be happy to. And then in my second input was I read a short text. This is an interesting text because it contains all of the different sounds of the English language. It's actually taken from the Speech Accent Archive, and it's a great example of a text that contains all of the different sounds of the English language. And so I thought that would be a good way for ChatGPT to analyze my accent. And of course, once I'd read that, it gave me feedback on my pronunciation, and it's given me some tips and some things to work on. This could have been any text, and it could have been any interaction that I had. It doesn't have to be feedback on my pronunciation. It could be feedback generally on the construction of my sentences or the overall construction of my text. But ChatGPT has that ability to analyze what you're saying and give you some feedback on it. So that's a kind of very interesting ability. And when you get the presentation, you can see that there's a link, a little chain link in the corner there. It enlarges. When you click on it, it will take you to the site where you can download that plugin for free if you're a Chrome user. So keep that in mind with the things that I'll show you in the rest of the presentation. Although I'm doing them using text, they could be done using voice. So I'll start with some things that students can do at home using ChatGPT as a buddy to develop their speaking and prepare them for pair work in the classroom. Okay, so the first one is an example of a role play. So we can program, I talked about programming ChatGPT earlier, we can program ChatGPT to be a role play partner for our students. I'll click on this little pen and I'll show you what the prompt looks like for that. At the top here, I've given you a template for a prompt. So when you get this presentation, you can copy this, put it into a document, and then edit it for whatever kind of role play you want your students to do. And the parts that you need to edit are in brackets. So you tell ChatGPT that we'll role play together. You use this sentence act as, which gets it to become something, and you tell ChatGPT what its role is. So whether you want it to be a friend, a partner, your husband, your wife, then in the next part, you put in the context or the place you are, so it understands context where you are, what the student's role will be, so what I will be, my student's role, and then you give it some rules. So there are just some rules to follow. So you can add any rules in here that you want. Then you say use English. I've used the Common European Framework of Reference to tell it what level I am. And then it has some constraints, wait before replying. And you give ChatGPT a name so that it can introduce yourself and tell it who you'd like to start the role play, whether I start or whether ChatGPT starts. That all looks quite complex, but here's a simple example. This is what it looks like in reality. So there's the prompt that I've written, and this will get ChatGPT to act as a waiter in a sushi restaurant. I've told it I'll be the customer. The rules to follow are it should be polite, it should be concise. It's quite important to ask it to be concise because it does tend to like to speak a lot. I've told it we'll take turns. It should use English suitable for level B1, and it should wait for me to reply before continuing. And then at the end, I've put, if you understand, then introduce yourself as June and ask how you can help. So I'm just going to demonstrate how that works now. So I'm going to copy this, go to ChatGPT. I've started a new chat and I'll paste it in, and then I'll hope for the best. Hopefully you can see that on the screen. I'll click enter. I'll enlarge the screen so you can see a bit better. I'm making it smaller, not enlarging it. Okay, so there's my prompt in the top, and there's ChatGPT said, of course, I understand the rules. Hello, I'm June, and I'll be your waiter for today. How can I assist you with your dining experience? Okay, so ChatGPT is being very polite. So I'm going to say, I'd like a table for two. I'd like a table for two. Okay, certainly, I can arrange a table for two. Please follow me to your table. Is there a specific area of the restaurant you'd prefer? Yes. Here, the prompts that I'm putting in are completely spontaneous. They aren't things that I've pre-programmed, and ChatGPT's response is completely spontaneous as well. I have no idea how it's going to respond each time I put this in. So this is a completely spontaneous interaction between us. So I've told it I'd like a table by the window. Of course, a table by the window is. Please follow me. Here's your table by the window. May I get you some menus? So now I'm going to tell it that I don't like this table and I want to change. I'm being a very awkward customer. So of course, I understand. Let me find a more suitable table for you. Please bear with me for a while. So I can continue this interaction. I can continue this role play with ChatGPT, and it's completely spontaneous. I don't have to follow any kind of fixed pattern. I don't have to. I can be as difficult or as polite or as impolite as I want to. I've given ChatGPT the rules, and I can work through the whole process of having my meal. I can send the food back. I can get ChatGPT to choose something from the menu for me. And this is kind of completely spontaneous free practice that I can give my students, that they can do at home, and then they can come into the classroom and practice together, we could actually take the script from one of those interactions, and students could analyze that together and actually learn different parts of it, particularly if they want to be the waiter. If I'd written the prompt a different way, I could have asked ChatGPT to be the customer and I would be the waiter. So we can sort of also change roles. So this is a nice way to get students preparing for pair work and preparing to do role plays. I'll just move on to a different kind of pair work. I mean, when I first started teaching, my students would always say that, the best way to learn language was to find a friend. And I was teaching in Egypt at the time. And so all of my students wanted to be my friend and go out and have casual conversations together, which was great. It was very nice, being able to socialize with my students in that way. They were all adults, and I was much younger at the time, so that was a great way to sort of learn about the culture. But not every student has that opportunity, especially these days, to actually have an English-speaking friend or a friend who speaks the language they want to learn. So, excuse me. So this is an example of a prompt that can turn ChatGPT into their friend. And again, I've given you a template which you can edit up the top here. And you can actually define the kind of friend that you would like it to be and what kind of support or advice you'd like it to offer. Sorry. I've got two prompts here. There's one that gives supportive and enthusiastic advice. And I've got another one who's not very supportive and tries to motivate me and stop me from being lazy. So I can have whatever kind of friend I want. I'm going to go for the one that stops me being lazy and see if that works. Okay, so I'm going to start a new chat so that ChatGPT doesn't get confused. I'll paste in my prompt. And now ChatGPT has become my unsupportive friend. Of course, I can provide you with an unsupportive advice to motivate you. Okay, so I'll tell it what's going on in my life and see how it responds. So I'm trying to do a presentation, but I keep coughing. Okay, and ChatGPT's being quite hard on me. Stop making excuses and just push through it. Clear your throat, take a sip of water and get on with the presentation. You can't let a simple cough derail your efforts. Keep going. So, okay, so I'll take my sip of water and clear my throat. I'm going to complain a bit more, but I'm tired. Tiredness is not an excuse. Pull yourself together, get some energy and finish that presentation. Success doesn't wait for the tired. Keep pushing. Okay, so I'll take that advice and I'll keep pushing on. So that's an example of how sort of ChatGPT can. I mean, I've chosen an unsupportive friend, but I could have a different kind of friend. And because I've programmed ChatGPT within this chat thread to be that friend, I can just come back to this chat thread anytime later. Like if I go to my sushi restaurant, I should still be able to upload that one and continue it. If I go to a new chat, I can come back and I can find my unsupportive friend and have another chat with them if I want to. You're not very nice. I apologize. My response seemed harsh. Just trying to motivate me. Okay, so they can have a moan with someone. And so that's a great way for them to spontaneously share whatever they're thinking or whatever they're going through with someone who can be supportive or unsupportive if that's what they want. And, they can sort of actually build a relationship with ChatGPT in that way over time and come back to that and tell it things that are quite private that they maybe don't want to share with a person as well. So that's something that they can do quite intimately. Another kind of interesting pair work prompt that you can use is that you can actually get ChatGPT to become an interviewer. So if your students need to do any interviews, whether they're interviewing for college, whether they're business students or adults who need to practice interviewing for a job, or they just want to interview someone maybe for a podcast or a radio show, they can actually practice that first by getting a prompt. This is one for an interviewer for a job. This is the prompt which will program them. We can edit the job title so that we put in any kind of job that they want to do, or whether it's a college application, and they can just take that to ChatGPT, put it in there. I'll just edit the job and I'll make it an ESL teacher. Oh, let's go for an online teacher. Okay, and then it will interview me for that job. Okay, so hello, welcome to the interview for this ESL online teacher position. Let's get started. Can you please tell me about your teaching experience and qualifications? So I have a master's degree, 30 years experience. That's impressive. With your extensive experience, you're likely to have lots to offer. Okay, can you elaborate on the specific age groups or proficiency levels you've worked with? So it's really kind of, so I'm telling you, I've worked with adults. Can you share your approach to fostering effective communication and language development with your students? So far, I teach lots of grammar. And again, this is completely spontaneous. I have no idea what questions it will ask. You know, I haven't pre-programmed my responses or anything like that. Okay, and it will. Do you use any specific teaching methods or resources to help them grasp grammar concepts? So it will continue interviewing me for as long as I keep asking questions. The other wonderful thing about this is that, you know, at the end of that interview, I can actually then ask ChatGPT for feedback on my question, on my answers, and get it to give me examples of what would be good answers as well. So, you know, that's a great way of practicing, you know, actually free practice fluency and getting some feedback and getting some input. And that's a great way of preparing at home so that when I go and do that real role play with another student in the classroom, you know, I have lots of different ideas and different expectations and I'm prepared. I'll give you one more example of a pair work activity, and that's a Q&A with a guest speaker. So, you know, we can actually get ChatGPT to become almost anyone from history, whether they're still alive or not, if they're well known, or whether they're dead. And we can create an interview. Our students can interview them. And so, again, I've got a prompt here. It's quite a simple prompt. You just act as famous, and then you put in the name of the famous person. Answer the questions I ask. My first question is, and you put the first question in. Okay, so my first one is I'm going to interview Marilyn Monroe, act as Marilyn Monroe, answer the questions I ask. My first question is, where did you grow up? Very lucky opportunity to interview Marilyn. So act as Marilyn Monroe. Okay, so it's gone straight into character. Well, Sugar, I grew up in Los Angeles, calling me Sugar. How nice. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, city of dreams and glamour, and I always knew I was destined for the bright lights of Hollywood. Okay, so I could ask it other questions now. What was your first acting role? Okay, so my first acting role, honey, oh, we're getting a bit too familiar, I think, was in a little film called Scudder Hooder, I can't say that, Scudder Who, Scudder Hay in 1948. Okay, why did you change your nose? So, darling, I understand there have been rumours about and speculations about my appearance over the years. you see, back in the day, I did have a minor cosmetic procedure on my nose to correct a slight irregularity. Okay, so then she explains. So I can go ahead and I can sort of go and ask any question that, that however personal or wherever the information comes from, and I can ask any question of ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will take on that role. It's not necessarily the case that ChatGPT answers honestly. It might be making that up. So if you're using this as a kind of preparation for research, getting them to do research online before coming into the classroom, make sure that they fact check all of the information that they get while they're doing the interview. Another kind of variation on that interview is that actually I could be the famous person and ChatGPT could then ask me questions. So there's another example here that you can try yourselves later. So I'm saying that I'm Abraham Lincoln, ask me questions. When I answer, ask me another question, continue to ask. And then actually, so that's a nice way of checking what I know about Abraham Lincoln, and maybe we can sort of get ChatGPT to correct me afterwards if I've got any of that wrong. So, again, a nice way to get students working with ChatGPT, preparing themselves at home to go in the classroom. Of course, they could also do it in the classroom if they have access. So those were all examples of sort of developing speaking skills, and which they could do, and fluency, which they could do through text, or they could do it through speaking using that plugin that I mentioned earlier. So let's have a couple of examples of reading skills, because not much has been said about ChatGPT and reading, and yet it has huge potential to change the way students read and make it much more interactive. There's an example here. I've got another example prompt here, and this one creates a reading maze. I don't know how many of you have done reading mazes or remember reading mazes, but when I first started teaching, there was a whole pack of them in my school. And what we'd do is students would get a card, they'd read it, and they'd get a choice of 3 different situations. And whatever situation they chose, they got a different card, and they went on reading cards and getting different situations to choose from until they hopefully found their way out of the maze and got to the end. This is something that took me hours to prepare. I remember writing for some courses that I was doing for Eton, and it took me hours to prepare one of these reading mazes that only had 5 or 6 different steps. But this is something that ChatGPT can do instantly. And so this is an example prompt here. It's quite a long one. So there's the template, and here's an example. In the example, I've asked it to become one of those Dungeons and Dragons type games. So that used to be very popular as text, and I program it to be the Dungeons and the Story Master. And when I click on Enter, it will give me step 1. And what it will do is it will describe my situation. So you find yourself standing on the edge of a dense ancient forest, the tall trees, gnarled branches reaching into the sky. So it's given me a very nice description. There are birds chirping. Before you lies a warm dirt path leading deeper into the forest. To your left, there's a babbling brook. To your right, there's a narrow, overgrown trail that disappears into the underbrush. This is your choice. So I have a choice underneath. I have my 3 choices of where I go. So I'll go for, I like the water, so I'll choose this one. Okay, and then it creates the next part of the story. I decided to head towards the babbling brook. It just describes the next part of the story, and then asks me what I'd like to do now. So, it's making up a new part of the story depending on my choices each time. And again, this hasn't taken any preparation. It's just a matter of putting in the prompt, and then ChatGPT spontaneously creates the rest of the story based on my responses. And this will keep going on and on until I decide that, I'm either bored or I want to finish the story. I'll try to catch the fish. So this is a kind of nice way for students to develop their reading skills, and it's completely interactive. It chunks the reading so they're not faced with a very, very long text, and keeps them active and involved with it. And again, I mean, this is an example that's based around Dungeons and Dragons, but you could change the prompt, edit the prompt, and it could be a murder mystery instead, or it could be, an attempt to get to the station, or to escape a country, or something like that. So, the only limit there really is your imagination and what you decide the prompt will be. I'll give you another quick example of reading skills. I'm sure any of you who have students, particularly teenage students, excuse me, they've read the Harry Potter books. And this is another prompt that actually drops them into the story of Harry Potter. And again, it doesn't have to be Harry Potter, it could be a different book if you edit the prompt. But this one drops them into the Harry Potter book at the stage in the story where they're meeting the Sorting Hat, and they're meeting the Sorting Hat, which is going to sort them into the different houses they should be in. And it actually starts, it's programmed to it describes the scene, and then the Sorting Hat starts asking them questions to decide what house they should go in. So here's the question. I see you need to make a decision. So tell me what qualities you most value in a friend. So what qualities do I value in a friend? Honesty. Okay. Honesty, you say, noble quality. Okay. Sorting Hat voice remains patient as though it's truly considering your response. The hall is hushed, waiting for an answer. What would you like to say? So now tell me how you would react if faced with a daunting and unfamiliar challenge, one that required quick thinking and determination. I would ask a friend for help. Okay. Seeking help is a wise choice. And one final question. If you could choose one magical ability to possess, what would it be? Oh, that's a difficult one. I'll say for invisibility. Okay. Okay, and it's considered my answers and it's decided to put me in Ravenclaw. Okay, so I'm now in Ravenclaw, and it continues with the story. There's a round of applause, the feast begins, and then someone called Luna, hello, I'm Luna, welcome to Ravenclaw, what's your name? I'm Nick. I'm Nick. Okay, and she considers, so it starts to continue a story. Ask me what I'd like one chilly evening. As you make your way to the library, you overhear a group of students whispering about a mysterious hidden passage within the castle. It's said to lead to a forgotten part of the castle filled with secrets. What would you like to do? I'd like to go to the passage. Okay, and so the story continues, and again, like I said, this is completely spontaneous. It hasn't been given a specific program or a specific chain of events to follow. It makes them up totally based on my response. So if we gave this prompt to a group of 20 students and told them to go home and have their adventure, each of them would have a unique adventure and a unique interaction with ChatGPT, a unique interaction with the story. And then they can come back to class and share their stories and tell other students what happened about them. So this is a great way of developing reading skills and then working that into speaking and pair work. They could even rewrite their story in the classroom and tell everyone what happened to them. And for me, that's a really, a very revolutionary approach to discovering, to developing reading skills, and very kind of unique. That's something I couldn't have done before. Maybe the reading mazes with little bits of chopped up paper, but it's very difficult to do it with this degree of spontaneity and creativity. Just want to have a quick look at writing skills and some examples of how ChatGPT can become a writing partner. The first thing, often we get our students to do creative writing, and as English language learners, they struggle with that because they struggle with being creative, coming up with ideas, and having to work with the language. So this is a simple plot that you can use, a simple prompt that you can use to get ChatGPT to create a plot for your students. So it will create the plot outline, and then you give the outline to your students and they do the writing. So here's the template for the plot. So create a plot outline of a story. You can put in your own topic and add a theme of some sort. So I've got create a plot outline for a story about traveling to the North Pole, include the theme of romance. This is for a group of adult learners, let's say. And I paste that in. And ChatGPT has given me quite a detailed sort of outline of what happens in each stage of the adventure. This is quite detailed. I can ask it to make it simpler. Okay, and it will reconstruct it again and make it a bit simpler. Okay, for me, that's still a bit too long, so I can reduce it to 10 lines and see what we get. So now I've got a very simple plot outline that I can give to my students, and they can use that as the basis for their writing skills. You could just give them the prompt and get them to create the plot outline themselves based on something that they want to write about, and then develop that. Another example of a sort of writing co-partner is that you can actually get it to partner with them and actively write part of the story for them. And again, there's a prompt here for this. Is the template. It's quite a long one. So that's quite a long template, and you can just sort of put in the different parts to edit it depending on the type of story you want it to be. Describe who the main hero is, add a little bit of background, other characters. And again, this could be something that you get students to write themselves and add in the level of the English. So here's an example of a story that we're going to write together. And this is a story about an orphan called Xanta. And if I copy and paste that into ChatGPT, ChatGPT is started by writing the first part of the story. So in the distant future, in a world where advanced technology and ancient traditions coexist, lived a young woman named Xanta. She was an orphan who had lost her parents at a very young age, but her life took a different turn when her mysterious uncle, a seasoned warrior, took her under his wing. Xanta's story began when she was 16, and her uncle, seeing her potential, decided that it was time to train her in the ways of a warrior. So ChatGPT's added its part of the story. Now I add the next part of the story. So Xanta was very afraid of her uncle as he always seemed angry. I should really be writing a lot more about that than that. You can stipulate to your students how much you think they should write, okay? And then, okay, ChatGPT adds its part of the story, and we can continue like this so that we co-create this story together, based on my prompts and my input. So Xanta's heart raced with fear as she watched her uncle's stern face, his eyes seemingly filled with a perpetual storm of anger. His presence had been intimidating, and she often wondered why he'd chosen to take her in. Yet deep down, she held onto a glimmer of hope that maybe through this training she could win his approval and uncover the mysteries that surrounded him. Okay. So I'm going to continue just one more entry. She gradually got better. Okay. And then ChatGPT adds the next part. So we can keep continuing this until we finish the story. And again, always remember that I can ask ChatGPT for input and evaluation of my part of the story. I can ask it for what could I have done better with my input, were there any mistakes, and that kind of thing. So ChatGPT can also give me feedback on my writing in that way. So that's again, that prompt's there, and you can just edit it or give it to students, get them to edit it, create their story, copy it, bring it to you, maybe for marking, or get ChatGPT to mark it, or they could co-write it with another student. I'll finish with just a couple of other prompts. These are to help with autonomous learning. We can, I've spelled interacting wrong there. There goes my dyslexia again. So we can get them to interact with ChatGPT and get ChatGPT to become their teacher. This is really useful, this prompt, if you have students that need to do extra work or very different work from the rest of the class. In a way, it's a way of giving students differentiated learning by giving them the prompt and enabling ChatGPT to set work for them and mark that work for them. So it's a very simple prompt. So act as my English teacher. I'll tell you what I want to study. You'll create activities to check and develop my knowledge. If you understand, reply with I'm ready. So I'm just going to copy paste that in. Okay. It says I'm ready. Let me know what aspect of English you'd like to study or improve. I'll create activities to develop your skills and knowledge. Okay, so I want to work on collocations. I need to improve my collocations. Great, working on collocations is good. And already it's just sort of quickly created 3 different activities for me. So I've got a matching activity to match the different collocations. And then I've got a fill in the blanks activity. So I need to use those there. And the third one is kind of a freer practice. This activity will help practice using collocations in context. Choose 3 collocations, previous exercise, create your own sentences with them. Okay. And then let me know the answers to the sentence and I'll provide feedback and further guidance. So, with this prompt, I'm getting 3 quick activities. I can do them. I can feed in the answers to ChatGPT and it will tell me what I got right or got wrong. And it will even explain to me why I got what is wrong about them. It doesn't just tell me that I'm wrong. It actually gives me some feedback. So using a prompt like this, ChatGPT becomes my teacher, and I can sort of develop any aspect of my language that I need to work with. So you can give that prompt to students, and if there's something specific that they need to develop, you can tell them, to go away, work with ChatGPT, and try and improve that. Last prompt. This is again a simple one. You can get ChatGPT to create smart plans or smart goals for students. And again, there's a prompt here, and it can be it can be edited, and you put in you describe yourself, what kind of person you are, whether you're a business person who wants to develop, whether you're a language learner, what level you are, and what you think needs attention. And again, I've got an example here. Write a smart plan to help an ESL language student improve their listening skills. Add some action steps. So again, I'm copying and pasting that in. There it goes. And it will create a smart plan. Smart plans are based around this acronym of specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So it produces a plan that is specific to their needs. It's measurable, so they can tell whether they've achieved it. It's realistic and achievable, and it's relevant to their goals. And of course, it will tell them how long they have to complete it. So it's given them this smart plan, and it's given them some action steps to follow. So identify specific listening challenges, determine realistic goals, create a schedule, aim for 30 minutes of daily practice. So it gives them a whole list of advice and action steps to take in order to achieve their goals. Okay, I'm sorry I had to rush through that last one, but you can pick up those prompts and try those later. One of the last things that I'll say is, getting ChatGPT to work for you and to get good results from it is really dependent on your ability to write prompts. And as you'll see, some of those prompts were very detailed, but it's again, the more information you get ChatGPT, the better the results you're likely to get from it. You can just enter into a conversation with it, asking and answering questions, and try and refine things that way. But if you give good structured prompts, you can program it to do some very good things for you. Here's an example of a badly structured prompt. Please read my text and suggest ways I can improve it. If you do that and you put a text in, you'll get some feedback from ChatGPT, but it will be very generic and it won't be specific to your needs. If you develop that prompt and edit it, so you read my text, be sure to tell it the type of text, so you're making the context clear. Tell it what the text is about. Tell it who the audience is, who you're writing for. Tell it what kind of feedback you want. So give me a list of bullet points about how I can improve it. Give suggestions or how you would like to add to it. And then if you understand, say I'm ready. So again, if we're specific about the type of prompt and the information that we want in that way, it can give us some very detailed feedback, some very detailed input, some very detailed tasks. So that's about it. That's been a lot of prompts and a lot of talking from me. Again, as I said, I'll give you the link to the presentation through chat, and you can get those prompts, copy paste them, and try them out later. I hope they've been useful, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions now. If you want that's me again. If you want to scan the QR code immediately to get the presentation on your mobile device, by all means do that now. And then I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, and then I'll go and take questions. So just take a couple of minutes to scan it if you want to.
Great. Thank you, Nick. So everyone take this opportunity. You can scan that QR code there and get the slides. We'll also be sending this out to you, so don't worry if it doesn't work for you for some reason. Thank you so much, Nick. That was a fantastic presentation. It looks like the chat was crazy. Q&A was going crazy. We don't have a ton of time for questions, unfortunately, but there looks like there's a lot of people who are asking, what is the name of the plugin? I believe
the plugin is called Voice Master. I'll go back to it. You'll be able to pick it up. I'll show you where you can. I'll just grab the link for it. That's
sure.
Probably the easiest thing.
Yeah, and if you could just drop that in the chat, we can pin that.
I will dump it. Put it in the chat. I put in the link to the presentation, and it's in the presentation. But if you want the link to the plugin, I'm just putting it in now.
Great. That was a very popular question. So there you go, everyone.
That's the link to the plugin, and that enables you to speak to ChatGPT.
Excellent.
And or speak back.
Very cool. Thank you for that. Let's try at least one more question. I'm going to put this one up on the stage. The question is, how can you use ChatGPT to help student pronunciation? That is one area for students to practice out of the classroom, especially in an EFL setting.
Well, that link that I've just put in, that is to the speech to text, text to speech program. So that will enable you to speak to ChatGPT. And when you speak to it, say, I want feedback on my pronunciation. And it will act as an ESL tutor and it will start to give you feedback. So then you read in a text. There's an example on the slide where the link is. You just read the text in and then ask for feedback on your pronunciation. And it will give you some tips and advice, as it did me. I've got to work on my S's.
Perfect. Well, that's great. So there you go, everyone. Use that plugin and you'll be able to get your students to practice their pronunciation. Okay, one last question. Nicholas, which courses can you suggest or recommend for online language teaching? It's a general question.
Is this online language teaching using ChatGPT or online language teaching to learn how to be an online language teacher? I'll recommend one from each. If you go to the British Council's website, they have a free course for teaching remotely, teaching online remotely. If you Google British Council course teaching remotely online, you will find that. If you're a language teacher and you want to use ChatGPT to teach in your classroom, I've actually written a course myself for how to do that, which is a self-access course which has 50 lessons with materials like this. And if you want to find that, you can Google it just by Googling Nick Peachey, ChatGPT in the language classroom course. I might even be able to find a link to that if I'm really quick.
Yeah, go ahead. If you could find that link and drop that in the chat, I think everyone would be very grateful. Yeah. That's awesome.
There's a course, and when you do the course, if you complete it, you get a free book with it as well, which is a compilation of all those things. I've just put it into the chat there.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, my course isn't free though, because I have to eat and I have children to feed and things like that. Hungry mouths,
We'll take the free book. There you go.
Yeah. So take the free course, do the course, get the free book. Okay.
Excellent. Okay, wonderful. That concludes our Q&A session. If you didn't get your question answered, make sure to grab a seat at the presenter table with Nick, and he'll be there for the next 15 minutes in our meet and mingle period.
Got to show my shirt too, haven't I?
Don't worry, I was just getting to
that. I thought you'd forgotten.
Oh, no, don't worry. I never forget. Because this is the most important part. We're going to do our draw now for our prize. And the prize is this wonderful t-shirt that Nick is wearing. It is an ElliiCon t-shirt. I don't even have this t-shirt, so I'm jealous of whoever gets to win this prize.
Just to clarify, it's not actually the one I'm wearing now, because that would be gross. It's the same as the one I'm wearing. Okay?
You get the same one, don't worry.
Good to be clear about these things.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to announce our winner. Let's get that name up on the stage. Here we go. Nick, could you read out the winner for us?
Okay, so the winner of this guest speaker session is Fernando C. from Mexico. Congratulations, Fernando C. Let's hope you're the same size as me, huh?
Congratulations. We will be in contact with you soon to organize your prize, and we can send you whatever size you need. Don't worry. Okay, for everyone else in the audience, if you didn't win this time, there are many other opportunities for you to win prizes. Make sure you take a look at the link in the chat. Don't forget about our leaderboard. We are still continually getting points throughout the day. Let's take a quick look again at our top 3 leaderboard people at the moment. I think the same 3 names. So the rest of you need to start getting some points up there. Okay. And also make sure to join in the conversation on social media. Tag us and use our hashtag ElliiCon2023 for your chance to win a 1-year subscription to Ellii. And don't forget to complete that event attendee survey. So thanks, everyone. It's time to grab a seat at a table in the social lounge. You have 15 minutes to connect with everyone else before the next session begins. Nick's going to be at that presenter table, so he'll be answering some more questions. We also have Anna and Shay from the Teacher Think Aloud podcast at one of our tables discussing their podcast. So make sure you go over there and talk to them as well. And coming up next, our guest speaker is Jamie Keddy, who will be presenting on the importance of storytelling as a teaching tool. Yes, it's going to be a really great presentation.
Yeah.
I hope you can all stick around. And that's it for now. Thanks again, Nick. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you all in 15 minutes.
Bye-bye.
Ellii.